What do you call yourself? As like the podium
I'm
finish?
yeah, so I'm our editor in chief, the head writer, basically the boss of the Podium Finish, or as we call it, TPF. So we're an independent motorsports media outlet. We've been around really since 2008, although when I say 2008, it's really more of a segment that I used to do on Bleacher Report. I was one of the 7 or 8 original NASCAR featured columnists when Bleacher Report kicked off that section. Some of the names that you may recognize include Kara Martin, um, also to Kelly Crandall, who is the National Motorsports Press Association president yet again. And then there's me. So some of us have obviously gone on to North Carolina. Some of us are doing as well as we can while, doing things in real life that honestly, even though I sometimes think, man, I wish I could be doing this full time. Like I am doing it full time, but I wish I could be in North Carolina. I really feel like I'm finally home here in Texas, and not because of the ice storm. I just feel like, man, I lived in Massachusetts. I was born and raised there. I lived in the Philippines, came back to Massachusetts. Never really felt like when I got back from the Philippines to the US that, Massachusetts was my home. So, lo and behold, here I am in the Austin, Texas area. I would say really finally in year number 5 that, this feels great. Don't ask me that question though in the summertime. I'm gonna probably say, oh, I would love to be in New England right now. But overall, I love life here in Texas.
Awesome, man. So have you written off Charlotte completely, or
I've been
are
I've
you
been to
set?
Charlotte, but I've never lived there.
Got
I visited Charlotte on 3 occasions.
you.
In 2012, I was a finalist for a job with Lionel Racing as a social media specialist. So that was pretty cool. I was 26, 25, so a little older than you, Sam, when I got that opportunity. And social media is definitely a different game than it was in 2012.
Oh
But
my goodness, you're not
uh,
kidding.
but to imagine that I was considered by one of the official partners of NASCAR at such a young age, and I don't think I really understood, appreciated, knew quite a lot about social media at that time. But to be honored, I mean, to be part of that conversation with Lionel, to meet some of the big individuals with that company, I still get chills down my arms and shoulders, thinking, man, um, if I was considered for that position back then, and I've gained a lot more experience and knowledge since then, certainly that's what gives me confidence that my time is coming. The other occasions I've been to Charlotte, 2014, I was just a fan. And I just wanted to kind of get the pulse of what life is like there, because when I did the job interview with Lionel in 2012, I think that was during the week of New Hampshire Motor Speedway race weekend. So I didn't get to see anything other than Lionel's office. 2014 was fun. It was the Coke 600 race weekend. Had a blast. I saw the Hendrick shop. I went to, what else did I go to? I went to, of course, the Lionel Racing. Well, they didn't have a store back then, so I'm sorry. I went to Concord Mills. I know I went to other shops. It's been such a blur for me. I think the biggest part, Sam, that I really enjoyed was going to the racetrack. And I realized right then and there, I didn't want to be a fan anymore. I wanted to really be a bona fide, respected journalist, because, and we'll get to it, I'm sure, a little bit later on, but the real reason why I'm in this journey is because I first wanted to meet the man behind my in my back screen right here, Jeff Gordon. I was thinking, how can I meet this guy who is super awesome, was one of my racing heroes? And I thought, well, maybe I can meet him as a journalist. And it took a while. Again, we'll get to that, I'm sure, a little bit later on.
Oh yeah, of course.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I went to Charlotte in 2014, and then in 2021, I got to visit Charlotte again, and I was covering the Bank of America Roval 400 race weekend at the Roval in Charlotte, which is still one of my favorite memories, just because I got to work with two of our teammates, Stephen Conley and Michael Guerrilla. And I'm sure you know who Michael is, of course. And I
Of
know that you
course.
guys have that sim racing background, and Stephen does too. And it was just so cool because, like, Michael's been taking these great shots, right? And then Stephen's a really talented photojournalist. And then I finally got to meet them, and they got to see some of my approach. And it was just good to get back to the racetrack after COVID. I hadn't been to a track in 2 years, hadn't been back to Charlotte in like 8 years or so. And just to really be back and kind of see how I measured up against other folks. I was pretty nervous, but I felt like, I had a pretty successful race weekend. And I think I formed a lot more friendships during that weekend too, that to this day I am really appreciative of. And then, here I am. This is my 15th season being a NASCAR journalist. I'm kind of the older, younger guy, I guess you will. Sam, you're a young guy and you're just getting, all your great successes early on. And
I
I
appreciate it.
kind of like it. You're like Jeff Gordon in the background right now, and I'm more like Jeff Gordon in the crankier older years. Um,
Nah, I wouldn't say
when
that.
he started, uh, wait till you get to be almost when you're staring at 40, closer than 30, you'll feel that way. Um, but no, man, it's been a journey for sure. So yeah, I've been back to Charlotte. It's a long answer I gave you, but I've been back to Charlotte 3 times, and I love it, and I'm hoping to visit it again at some point this year. Um, I would love to do the 600. We'll just have to see if I have the stamina to stay up for that.
It's a lot. So you mentioned that you had that initial opportunity with Lionel Racing doing their social media, and you also tie that in with you meeting people at Charlotte, your team members, which I don't think people realize if you're on like Podium Finishes content stream that the team that they have is massive. Like it is huge. Like uh, you're the boss of so many people and you manage it so well. How do you get these people? Because when I started, you contacted me, just like I friend requested you because I just knew your name, and like that was how I was kind of networking. And you reach out and you're like, "Hey Sam, you ever shot a NASCAR race before?" And I'm like, "Payday, homie, let's go! I'm excited. This is what I've been waiting for." And then I found out I'm like part of your purge of like 6 or 7 other people that came in the first time in the Zoom meetings. Like, how do you? Is that just it? You just message people and be like, "Hey, you want to come work for us?"
Well, really, I kind of scout other folks just by looking at their social media profiles. I not so much to know about their personal details, but like if I've noticed on your profile that you've been shooting photos or you have great writing skills, and I feel like you can bring that into an actual media um, version of such skills, then I'll give you a chance. I know when I recruited you, I noticed you were a friend of Seth Egert, one of my buddies too. He's with Kicking the Tires. And, when I messaged you, I reached out to Seth. I was like, what do you know about Sam? He's like, he's really young, but he's super talented. And if you just make sure he has all the equipment to succeed, you won't be disappointed. And I was like, well, it's going to be fine because I think managing people is certainly all about how you ask yourself the main question: how do you want to be treated by others? And that's kind of my little mantra. As far as finding people to join TPF, again, it's all about, looking up their accounts in terms of their works. Do they have coachability skills? Because obviously you could be talented, but if you don't have the people person skills, that kind of makes it a little difficult. But if you have skills that can be marshaled and you just haven't tapped into it, but you're a good person, those are the kinds of people I want on our outlet. So, I mean, when you joined, I think you were like number 18 or 19 overall on the roster, but I think you were like the first or second recruit after 2021 going into 2022. And oh gosh, since then we've doubled that number, which it blows me away. I kind of think I have to actually credit you for that, Sam, because a lot of folks who have joined our outlet often say, I know Sam, and Sam's said a lot of great things about you and TPF. Can you tell me more information about us, the outlet? And I'd be like, sure, let's talk about it. Here's the rules and guidelines, which like I did with you. Um, and it's just crazy. Sometimes I kind of wonder, how do I do it? Because
Yeah.
um, the thing that people don't realize is that I work a full-time day job too. So I'm actually not, I don't want to say the name of the company, not because it's like, ooh, it's secretive, but I'm a technical writer for let's just say a real estate property management company during the day. And during that time too, I'm also an online graduate student at St. Bonaventure University. I'm actually in my last semester of my digital journalism program. So in concurrent with school, with work and TPF, somehow I have to have a real life somewhere. So it's all about time management, people management, and also the theme for this year for me is really taking better care of myself.
Yeah, you do a fantastic job because I know that you are always balancing so much. Like anytime I talk to you, oh yeah, we're gonna get this done. I just gotta do this first. And it's just like, oh my goodness, man, how's this guy not burn out? But going back to the how you get members for the podium finish, you compared to most other media outlets that I'm aware of, you have a very open door policy. Like a very just like we want to give people a chance. And naturally you get some not the best candidates in there. And dealing with, such a large group of people, how do you deal with when you get, because it's happened a handful of times you said over the years. How do you approach that?
Well, really, it comes down to what I write down in the codes of conduct and, the guidelines. Of course, if it's something that I think goes beyond what I put in our policies and our guidelines, and obviously, extreme measures are considered. But you'd have to do something really, really, really big to like get on, my radar for that. Really what it comes down to is sometimes you don't know until you have that person on the team, because people will do great initial impressions. You might feel like you have that great vibe with that individual. And then as time comes on, you give them the ability to cover, a race weekend. Sometimes you find out that, oh, they don't quite follow the instructions I want, or, oh, because you might have another teammate with you or two other teammates, and those two teammates pull the weight, and the other person is probably more like chatting with their friends, shopping in the fan plaza, or just doing nothing. Um, I think what helps us figure out like who we can weed out to who I can kind of pull aside and kind of coach and mentor them better. It comes down to good communication. So it's not just me doing it on my own. I mean, we have people on our team that, I have built friendships around, I have built professional relationships around, and there's a great sense of trust with all of you, with all of us. I mean, the great thing is about TPF, yes, we have an open door policy, because the one thing, Sam, that I think most people fail to realize, especially in this day and age with digital and social media, is that it's okay to be different from everyone else. I think it's great that social media allows everyone to have a voice, but that's also the detriment of social media. So to me, it comes down to, how do I lead the team? If I put on a front that's strong, if I can be understanding, the rest of the team probably will follow suit on that. Not like because I'm making them group think, because believe it or not, we do disagree with each other. But the best part is we can learn how to improve our processes. How do we improve dynamics with each other? And even with me, I mean, I might be the one of the older folks on the team, but I'm still evolving. I'm still growing. And I'm not always going to get it right. But I do strive to learn from those experiences. So, when things like that come up, it's just about, number one, how can I avoid that from happening again? Because if I make it a recurring thing, that's not on, yes, it's on that person, but it's also kind of on me not to be a good judge of character. So, I try to feel people out better. I have a vetting process now, and I don't just say you're good. I love that angle of that car you got at turn 3 at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. I'm obviously going to try to see if you're a good character as well.
No, that's awesome. And that's a big responsibility to take on and then being so openly to admit it. It's a big learning process, like it's hard to be a judge of character over the internet, especially when you aren't meeting these people in real life.
Oh, it
It's
can be,
difficult.
and I don't get it right all the time. There's there's some moments where you think that individual because of common interest, or you open your heart up to that person, and you find out that's it's sort of like paid advertisements, or watching those home shopping network channels, and you're like, man, that jacuzzi would be a great idea, and then you get it and you realize, oh, why did I get this? Or was this the right idea
Like
for,
it's like
you know,
impulse purchases.
exactly. I think the best, the thing about getting older, Sam, that I'm enjoying is that I am learning to get better about trusting my gut instincts, which sometimes sucks because that means I have to hand out bad news or have to decline or reject, people from joining us, or, just being like, I'm sorry, we already got two people to go to this race. That's a third person, as much as I'd love to do that, probably is not going to happen. But I'll explain why we can't do that. So it's a bit of an art skill to do, but I also think it's just about the way you communicate that to others. Like I try to imagine if I was the other person on the other screen, how would I want to hear myself tell me about what's going on? But of course, I realize there's other elements to that individual that's different from me. So I try to tailor my approach. And that's why, we have this open communication. We have like in our internal chats, we have like an off-topic channel chat where pretty much anything can be talked about as long as it's within acceptable means. But I mean, otherwise, it's really interesting. We have such a different group than ever. We have the young folks like you, Hayden Rush, Nathan Solomon. You have sort of the mid-tier age people. You're not quite old, you're not quite young. And then you have the older group, the older talents who, I just try to treat everyone the same. Ultimately, I don't go, oh, I'm going to give orders to an older person. That's going to be tough. Or, ha, 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 I can't wait to tell this younger person it's my rules and that's just how it goes. No, everyone, in my opinion, my perspective, I try to treat everyone the same.
Yeah, and that all that, that intuition and that gut feeling you talked about, that's something that, I guess it really comes to experience as age, which goes back to like when you're a kid, your childhood hero, Jeff Gordon, as you said, we get into this earlier. You just interviewed him. How'd that
Yeah.
go?
Oh, that was fantastic, man. I mean, I had a great time talking to Jeff. It was kind of an interesting time because it was during my lunch break at work. So, I let my boss know. I was like, hey, I need this hour block because
Hey,
sometimes I
yeah,
only
sorry,
try
I
to,
just gotta go talk to Jeff Gordon really quick. I'll be back.
yeah. Because sometimes what happens is like, I work a pretty fast, quick job for during the day. And sometimes they'll try to like say, hey, can you do this? And I'm like, I kind of want to have some me time, but when I get back, yeah, I'll roll my sleeves up. We'll get things done. But with Jeff Gordon, though, I mean, that was such an amazing conversation, honestly. Now it helped that I talked to Jeff 3 other times. I talked to him over the phone, and I've interviewed him twice in person. So doing the interview via Zoom, I was like, I already know what he looks like. I know he'll give me pretty informative, insightful answers. So let's just try to tailor this interview a little bit more like a conversation. And it's not to sound like I'm a weirdo or anything, but being a fan of Jeff throughout my life and reading his books, having magazines as a kid about Jeff or covering what he did, I kind of knew what stuff he was already asked. So I just wanted to tailor it around his 30th anniversary of his Cup season, which that's why my backdrop right now is Jeff's first 1993 Daytona 500 car. So I want to show y'all, like even Jeff's right there.
Yes.
When he was doing his Daytona 500 pit road qualifying shot that I've been trying to get our photographers to do. And anyways, interview went really well. I think really what it came down to was you just treat them like a person. I mean, did I get starstruck? Yeah, of course. When do I not get starstruck? But the thing is like you realize that people like Jeff are just people who excel at their day job. And you kind of just have to make that day job seem more relatable to people. And if you do that, they'll open up to you. So you're not just like, oh my God, you won the 1997 Daytona 500. That is so cool. What was it like to drive that car? 2458. And, did you feel like Earnhardt deserved that? No, I was like, let's just cool off the jets. Let's just talk to him as if I've known him for over the years, which I did. But I mean,
Yeah,
actually, as
so
a journalist, it's been, gosh, how many years have I talked to him? It's been 7 years since I've talked to him. So, I mean, it's fine.
so let's talk about that bit. So you mentioned earlier that like you're just like the one of the reasons you got into the whole journalism is like so you could talk to these people. Over all this time, working in this field now, you've developed some relationships, like some good relationships with some of these people. And how deep do some of those go, and what are some of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of those friendships are not just around journalists, of course, although I do have a lot of friends who are journalists or photographers. Um, it's granted, we know that I get along with the TPF team, and most of you folks on the TPF team are my friends. But I have friends who are tire changers. I am actually friends with some of the drivers, which is great because they can tell you a little bit more about what goes on. But you also have to remember to put your journalist cap back on, because um, the thing people kind of get confused about with journalism is the words biasness and impartiality. What it really comes down to is, can you separate your personal relationships and feelings with people so that you can tell things from a detached perspective, a detached emotional perspective? Like, I will be the first to call out my friends if they make a mistake, but I'm not going to say it in a way that's going to tear them down. I'll just say what really happened in a really honest account. So I think for me, I always tell my friends who are race car drivers or tire changers, I'm like, hey, look, don't take this personally. This is part of my job. We can separate what we do for our occupation and still chat. We can text each other, we can talk to each other. When I'm at a race, go ahead, you can say something about me and I'll be okay about it. I don't want to name drop anyone and make it seem like, oh, he's a big deal that he knows so and so, but um, I get
We'll talk
along really.
after.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty public though that I get along really well with AJ Allmendinger though. I mean, he um especially because you can watch these clips on YouTube. You look up press conferences, Xfinity Series 2021. Look up the one about the drive for the Cure 300 at Charlotte in 2021. I mean, AJ turns a really serious question into one where he twisted it in a playful way. I'll just put it like that. And that's kind of fun. I think to me, when drivers do that, when anyone in the sport does that to you, that means you worked your guts off to be able to have that trust with that person. Um, so I'm really proud of that because, like I said earlier, sometimes I do wonder, like, what would have happened if I lived in North Carolina versus in Massachusetts and now in Texas? But then I'm thinking, well, that's the beauty about remote technology. Like, I go to races as much as I can, and especially once I get grad school finished up, there will probably be a better opportunity for me to travel. Um, it's just about being connected. And that's the great thing about, well, again, I tend to see social media actually as a good thing. It's just about consuming it in so much appropriate amounts. So yeah, I'm proud to have been friends with folks that I met through social media. In fact, I think during the Rocks 24, I kind of tweeted some articles about, I think it was Georgia Henberry, who is now a pit reporter for NBC's motorsports coverage. And it kind of hit me that, 10 years ago, I interviewed her and she was like a micro sprint racer out in Missouri. And I was like, my goodness. I mean, we're both quite a bit older than we were, but we're also doing pretty darn well. I mean, I'm not in TV or with a major media outlet, but she's achieving what she's wanting to do, to be in racing, and I'm doing the best I can. So it's really fun to see those friendships grow and see where it takes you as friends and as individuals.
Yeah, you published quite a bit, man. You're a National Motorsports Press Association member as of, was it 2021? I believe
Yeah,
21.
so this is
Yeah,
year number
so
3 now.
yeah, man, that's awesome. So did childhood you ever like see you having these relationships with different NASCAR drivers or being a journalist? Like what is childhood you thinking about this?
Well, I think he would probably be wondering, like, number one, how the heck did you learn how to write? Because to be honest, I hated writing. I hated anything to do with reading and writing as a kid.
Me too.
The,
I
the
still
only
do.
thing the only thing that I was concerned about was trying to be a race car driver. So in some ways, when I see folks doing iRacing, I'm like, man, that was me before, but with an older game and an older platform. And I didn't have a steering wheel. I used a keyboard. So kind of a noob, but I knew how to set up cars and all. But anyways, childhood me would have imagined just being a fellow race car driver or just being a fan, really, if I didn't become a driver. I think what changed me from being a total hater of journalism and writing. I don't mean I hate journalism. I love to read newspapers. I didn't like to read books. But the moment that changed my life, Sam, was back in 2003 or 2003. Sorry, folks who don't want to hear 2003 is 2003.
I'm just more disturbed that you said 2003. That's
I know.
something.
Well, we say 2023, so we don't say 2023. I don't know, whatever. It's
I'm
like
just saying I
Coca-Cola.
lost a little trust in you, how you worded that.
That's okay. I'll gain it back. In 2003, I was in 11th grade, and I think it was my American history class. It's been a while, so you have to forgive me for my foggy memory on this. But I went on a field trip to the National Guard's base in Milford, Massachusetts. And believe it or not, at this time, during that time, it was a big field trip, not just to meet the soldiers. And by the way, obviously, we want to thank all the men and women and all of those who are serving in the military, just to give us these days and opportunities to do what we're doing right now. So thank you very much for all your selfless sacrifices and efforts, for sure. Went to this National Guard base. We met the soldiers, got to see the tanks and all of that. The best part was we were told to sit in this room because we were going to do a video phone call with soldiers in Afghanistan. Today, that's called Zoom or Skype or Teams.
That was a big deal to do something like that back then.
Oh, it was huge, man. I mean,
yeah.
It blew my mind because you have to keep in mind, dial-up internet was still going on. Broadband internet was just about being released to the public. And for me, it was just kind of mind-boggling that here I am in Milford, and I'm just sitting with my classmates who, at the time, I didn't really care about because I was being bullied by them a lot. But I was thinking to myself, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, and I'm not trying to be arrogant about this. I'm sitting there and I'm listening to their questions, and I'm like, why are we dodging the obvious questions, the real serious stuff? I don't mean political ramification type questions. I just mean, let's actually talk to them like actual adults. So just to give some a little context, and then I'll wrap up my answer here. In 2003, this was before the early part of 2002, 2003. It was before the war in Iraq kind of kicked off. So there was some rumors that there was going to be chemical warfare in the US, and there were things going online, surprisingly, things going online telling us that we needed to cover our windows with plastic and we needed to stay home in case Iraq or our enemies were going to attack us with airplanes with chemicals. And there was some credence to those concerns. I mean, some politicians, some people were getting anthrax mailed to them. And it was a crazy time. It was pretty scary. So anyways, I asked a soldier, I can't remember his name. I asked him point blank, I was like, what are your thoughts about what's going on back home with having the public having to wrap their homes with plastic on their windows?
Should we really believe that? How old were you when you asked this?
I was 17.
I thought you say 7. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I was 17. I was like, whoa. If I was older, I probably would have framed it better than that. But I got a really good response, and I liked how honest the soldier was. He was just like, yeah, we've heard about it too, but to be honest, I wouldn't believe any of that. Just, trust in us that we're going to get the job done, and don't read too much about what's being said online. And I was just like, hey, if I kind of take this thing seriously, maybe this is what I should be pursuing for the rest of my life. Maybe not with hard-hitting news, because, I watched the evening news back then. I watched a lot of Dan Rather on CBS, Peter Jennings on ABC, and Tom Brokaw on NBC. I looked up to all three. But no way in hell would I want to be sent to Iraq, Afghanistan, and be on the battlefields. And what if my parents found out I got blown away or something? Like, that would really freaked me out that I would be hurt doing something I love. So I think I realized in 2003, I actually had ambition. I wasn't going to just, wilter or waste away after high school. I wanted to go and pursue journalism. So I went to school. Took me a while to get my bachelor's. And then years later, I decided to get my master's. And this is where we're at.
At what point did you decide you wanted to do it in like a motorsport specific? Even though you don't, you do obviously you're talking about how you do real estate and stuff, but when did you decide that your passion, or seemingly it seems your passion, was in motorsports opposed to just freelance or real estate?
Yeah. So, I mean, the inklings of it really began in 1998 because when I used to get, in that motorsports magazines at the newsstands or at Borders, Rest in Peace, and Barnes and Noble, I used to think, maybe I can do an article about Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt, the top contenders. Of course, as a 12-year-old, I'm very biased, or I'm very one-sided. I'm going to be supporting
Yes, Gordon's
drivers.
the bestest.
Yeah, exactly. I was just praising the hell out of him, and I didn't really give an objective point of view. um, and I think the fan in me started to fade, not like in a disillusioned way, but the fan voice in me kind of faded, I would say by 2008. I got homesick because when I was living in the Philippines, the only motorsports that was seen on TV was Formula One. And I wasn't really a big fan of it. I mean, I knew to watch it. My classmates watched it. They would talk to me about it. Like I knew the names like Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, um, all these drivers, Kimi Räikkönen, among others, Jenson Button. But I just didn't relate to them. I still missed my back at home, NASCAR racing series, even trucks or ARCA. I was craving for that. And then one day, my mom went back to the US for some health stuff. And my sister accompanied her for about half a year. So it was me and my dad by myself in the Philippines. And I needed something to do besides feeling sorry for myself and feeling sad that, my family was not in the same place. So I decided I'm going to write about racing. And I could do better than Bob Hawkers and Jeff Gluck, which, with all due respect, they're pretty darn good writers. I feel like over the years, I've hopefully gained some ground to be considered even hopefully in the same breath as them. But younger me was a little too cocky again. But anyways, I decided I was going to pursue a post with Bleacher Report. And I did articles about, the mid-pack drivers who was going to be driving for Red Bull Racing in 2009. And then eventually I found my niche by realizing I could cover motorsports. And my favorite angle, honestly, was promoting women in racing. I don't mean in like in a wags way or like sexiest driver kind of way, but I felt in 2008, 2009, we weren't doing a good job trying to be like better stewards or ambassadors of diversity in motorsports, especially with women. And I still feel like we could do better with that, by the way, in 2023. But in 2008, I decided, if I can't write about Gordon because I don't have a way to contact Hendrick Motorsports back then, I would, go on social media. Or Twitter, Facebook. If I can find these drivers, I would introduce myself, let them know what my hook was. If they agreed, I would have to call them up on my phone, and I used a prepaid card to call them. And I think I spent about a good like $300-$400 just to call these people for 20 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
So I was pretty dedicated.
Yes, and you're still dedicated. So we'll wrap this up here because you got to go. And I definitely have to have you back on. So I'd love to talk more about your, I guess, drive for diversity in NASCAR. Please don't sue me, NASCAR. But you have a couple upcoming projects you're working on. So obviously, like we mentioned before, you recently interviewed Jeff Gordon. You
Yeah.
got that. And then just as a whole, NASCAR's turning 75 this year.
Yeah. So it's a huge, huge season in the world of NASCAR. The 75th anniversary is something that we should all, take a lot of pride in. Back in 1994, the NFL was really gung-ho about celebrating the 75th anniversary of its season, its existence. And with NASCAR, I think it's significant that it's still alive, despite how many people on Reddit or Twitter may say the sky is falling, it's dead. And then you still see those people. We were talking about this beforehand, how people are like, 2008, that was the greatest NASCAR season. What happened to NASCAR? And I was thinking, oh wait, wasn't that great? It was good. My sense of good at racing was actually back in 95, 96.
And for me, growing up in the 2000s, like 2011, because I didn't watch 2011 was like the peak year.
Well, I mean, I won't disagree with you in that. I think 2011 was a pretty good modern NASCAR era year. And I think, yeah, in my next appearance, if you invite me back, I would love to talk about, some of the best seasons since we hit the 21st century. That would be a long one for sure. But honestly, my biggest projects this year, yeah, the NASCAR at 75 project. Gordon's part of the bigger spectrum of that because it's part of my grad school project to highlight his 30th anniversary as a Cup rookie and how he basically started the Jeff Gordon effect. Short story on that, Jeff Gordon was the first young driver who was somewhat unproven but super talented to be given the opportunity to drive one of the best cars in all of Cup racing. New team, but with one of the best organizations around. And he took it, he ran with it, he won with Ray Evernham, Robbie Loomis, all of his crew chiefs and teams throughout the years. And I feel like car owners have been searching for that next Jeff Gordon. Ironically, I feel like the only team that's been able to perfect that is Hendrick Motorsports. Yeah, you could say other teams have done that, but the NASCAR at 75 piece will look at Gordon's impact on NASCAR. And I'm also going to profile some of the drivers who you may have not heard from over the years because either you were too young to remember them or it's been a while since we've heard from them. So I'll tell you a few that I'm trying to get is Terry Labonte and Kenny Schrader, who ironically are Jeff Gordon's former teammates. So I want to kind of celebrate the drivers you may have not heard from for quite some time. And then the other one's really just kicking off my YouTube channel to be a bit more comfortable on a face-to-face environment because I'm used to being more behind the scenes and I'm learning to be okay with my mistakes on camera or my flub ups when I mess up a word. But hey, man,
You've been
it's not about getting
flawless so
practice.
far tonight.
Well,
Been flawless.
thank you. It sounds vain, and my last thought really on that is I used to practice being interviewed when I was a kid, and ironically, I think I was inspired by something I read on ESPN Outtakes by Dan Patrick. He interviewed Shannon Sharp, who everyone knows is now the media pundit over on FS1. Well, he used to pretend to interview himself by looking at himself in the mirror, grabbing a hairbrush, and he often said he asked himself the hard questions. He never wanted to be confronted with the easy ones. And that's sort of why I think over the years I've tried to get better with my public speaking. And I'm not trying to do it in the corporate way. I want to relay what I'm thinking at the moment and say it verbally, but in a way that, it's still conversational. So I guess props to Shannon Sharp for indirectly inspiring me, which is kind of weird because I did not care for him beating the New England Patriots in the 90s. So it's all good.
And I can attest to the saying stuff in the mirror thing. For the last year, 2 years, I've had "I will be a professional motorsports photographer" written on my mirror. And I can attest this works. I know a lot of people, I'm not, I want to call myself, I'm like I don't know what to label myself. Anyways, fake it till you make it, lie to yourself till it's not a lie anymore. The mirror thing works wonders. But anyways, Rob, you got to wrap it up. I know you got to bundle up. It's freezing. Would you like to promote any social media quick before you head out?
Yeah, of course. And first of all, thank you, Sam, for inviting me on here. And I think a lot of folks are going to enjoy, having a nice little sit-down conversation with you. So I hope you get all the success with your channel and your project here. As far as finding me on socials, pretty much everything is at Rob Tiongson, with Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. So follow me there. If you really want to follow me on Facebook, I'm really boring because I just share family photos and cat pictures and dog photos. It's at RTTPF. So Rob, initial for Rob Tiongson, and then TPF for the Podium Finish. So that's where to find me, folks.
All righty. Rob Tiongson on the Sam Draiss Show.